Usually when we think about algae, we picture like that murky, static green scum just sitting on top of a stagnant pond.
Right, yeah. Not exactly an appetizing image.
No, not at all. It's not exactly the image of dynamic health or, cutting-edge biology, but there is this microscopic algae out there that when it's pushed to the absolute brink of survival, it completely transforms itself.
It really does. It's fascinating.
It sheds its green exterior and builds this brilliant, vibrant red armor. And that exact red armor is taking the clean label supplement and skincare world by absolute storm.
It is one of nature's more dramatic plot twists, honestly. You're looking at a microscopic survival mechanism, and when you understand how to properly harness that mechanism, well, it translates into a highly bioactive tool for the human body.
Exactly. So today we are going to cut through all the marketing fluff you see online. We want you, the listener, to understand exactly what this red compound is, how it works on a cellular level, and maybe most importantly, how you can spot the high-quality stuff in a market that's just flooded with cheap knockoffs.
Yeah, the market is definitely crowded right now.
It really is. So we are looking at Astaxanthin, specifically derived from an algae with a bit of a tongue twister name, Haematococcus pluvialis.
You nailed it.
Thank you, I practiced. And we're pulling from this incredible industry text today, a guide by Lorraine Fabian over at Ingredientsage, simply titled Haematococcus pluvialis Astaxanthin, a comprehensive guide to sources, benefits, and quality.
And that guide is invaluable because, it bridges the gap between the raw, messy biology of the algae and the finished, pristine capsule sitting on your pharmacy shelf.
Right.
The popularity of Astaxanthin is soaring right now. But what the data makes incredibly clear is that the source of the compound and the exacting science of how it's extracted, well, they dictate everything.
So it's not all created equal.
Not even close. Those factors are literally the difference between buying a potent tool for your cellular health and just swallowing an expensive, brightly colored pill that does absolutely nothing.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get into what it does for our human biology, I want to understand why this compound even exists in the wild. I mean, an algae doesn't just wake up one day and decide to turn red, right?
No, it definitely does. It begins its life cycle in what we call a motile green phase.
Motile, meaning it moves around.
Exactly. It is a single cell swimming around with these tiny flagella, photosynthesizing, just living a very standard, happy algae existence.
And it's green because of chlorophyll.
Right. It's completely green because it's full of chlorophyll, just like a plant. But this specific organism has evolved in environments that are highly volatile.
Like what kind of environment?
Think small pools of water that can dry up or freeze over or suddenly just be blasted with intense, unshaded sunlight.
Oh, wow. So the algae is just swimming along, doing its thing, and suddenly the environment turns totally hostile. Like the water evaporates or it completely runs out of nutrients.
Exactly. It experiences severe environmental stress. And instead of just dying off like most microscopic organisms would, it undergoes this massive biological transformation.
It fights back.
It really does. It loses its flagella. It stops swimming. It basically stops acting like a vulnerable green plant cell and transitions into a dense, dormant cyst.
Okay.
And to protect the precious DNA inside that cyst from the harsh environment, especially from oxidative damage caused by intense UV radiation from the sun, it rapidly synthesizes and stores massive concentrations of astaxanthin.
And that's the red stuff.
That's the red stuff. This pigment is stored in the form of protective carotenoid esters, and it turns the entire cell a deep blood red.
To me, this sounds exactly like a microscopic organism realizing a brutal winter is coming, so it builds a highly fortified red bunker.
That's a great way to look at it.
Like it creates this heavy suit of armor to survive the siege, locking itself away inside this astaxanthin shield until conditions improve and the water finally returns.
The bunker analogy perfectly captures the mechanism, honestly. The astaxanthin acts as a potent physical and chemical shield. It absorbs the UV radiation, and it neutralizes the free radicals that would otherwise just shred the cell's DNA.
That's incredible.
And this biological quirk, this what we call stress-triggered biosynthesis, is the absolute cornerstone of the entire commercial astaxanthin industry.
Meaning if you just put the algae in a nice, comfortable tank with plenty of food, it just stays green. You get zero astaxanthin.
Precisely zero. To get those high pigment yields, commercial producers literally have to stress the algae out on purpose.
They have to torture it a little bit.
Basically, they cultivate a massive population in the happy green swimming phase, just get the sheer numbers up. Then They intentionally subject the entire population to severe nutrient deprivation and highlight stress to force that red cyst transformation.
Wow.
And deliberately stressing a biological organism at an industrial scale is incredibly delicate. It requires intense process design.
Because you could just accidentally kill it.
Exactly. You have to ensure the algae survives the stress long enough to actually produce the red pigment, rather than just collapsing and dying off.
Wait, so if this whole process requires walking a tightrope of intentional starvation and stress, how on earth do you scale that up? I mean, moving from a pond to a commercial pill cannot be a simple straight line.
It is a massive engineering challenge. The cultivation phase is broadly divided into two main philosophies: open pond systems and closed photobioreactors.
Okay, let's start with open ponds.
Open ponds are large, shallow raceway pools exposed directly to the sky. They have very low capital costs to build. I mean, you just need land, water, and paddle wheels to keep the water moving.
But the guide points out a glaring flaw there, right? High contamination risks and incredible seasonal variability. I mean, you are completely at the mercy of the weather.
100%.
Like a rainstorm changes the water chemistry, a cloudy week ruins the light stress, and bird droppings or wild competing strains of algae can just blow right into the water.
Yeah, that wild variability complicates the scale up and makes batch-to-batch consistency a total nightmare. You might get a great yield in July and a terrible one in November.
Right.
So the alternative is the closed photobioreactor. Picture vast networks of clear glass or plastic tubes completely sealed off from the outside world.
Like a giant science experiment.
Exactly. These closed systems provide rigorous control over every single variable. You control the exact mix of atmospheric contamination, the precise oxygenation levels, and the exact wavelength and distribution of light hitting the tubes.
And that gives you a better product.
Much better. That tight control guarantees much higher, more uniform astaxanthin yields and significantly faster turnaround times.
Okay, let me stop you there because I have to push back on this.
Sure.
If closed photobioreactors are superior in literally every way, better consistency, tighter control, zero bird droppings, why is anyone still digging open ponds? It seems wildly irresponsible for a premium supplement brand to rely on an open pool of water.
I get that. But it comes down to the staggering economics of scale. If we connect this to the bigger picture, closed photobioreactors require a massive initial capital investment.
Because of all the equipment.
Right. Building miles of specialized, sterile, climate-controlled, medical-grade tubing is exponentially more expensive than just digging a lined pond in the desert.
Okay, fair enough.
However, for brands prioritizing rapid market entry and strict clean label quality control, those closed systems are becoming non-negotiable despite the price tag.
Makes sense.
Regardless of the hardware, producers are constantly managing three critical levers of industrial viability: contamination control, nutrient management, and exact harvest timing.
Right, because if you harvest too early, the red bunker isn't fully built yet, so you get a weak yield.
Yeah.
Harvest too late, and the cell might start degrading. But let's say they hit that perfect harvest window. They have a massive batch of tough red cysts. How do you actually get the astaxanthin out of that bunker without destroying it?
That's the next big hurdle.
The source highlights green extraction technologies, which sound crucial if you want a clean label product.
BR. The goal is to crack open that tough red cyst and pull out the delicate astaxanthin molecule without leaving behind toxic chemical solvents like hexane, which actually used to be the industry standard.
Hexane, like in gasoline. Yikes.
Yeah, not something you want in your health supplement. The two leading green methods today are supercritical carbon dioxide extraction and highly optimized ethanol-based approaches.
Okay, supercritical CO2 always sounds like absolute science fiction to me. How does a gas we breathe out act as a solvent?
By manipulating physics, basically. Producers take pure carbon dioxide and apply intense pressure and specific temperatures until the CO2 reaches a supercritical state.
Which means what exactly?
It becomes this dense fog that is neither fully a gas nor fully a liquid. And in this state, it acts as an incredibly selective solvent. It washes over the crushed algae cysts, dissolving and pulling out the fat-soluble astaxanthin, leaving all the polar impurities and heavy metals behind.
Wow, and then what happens to the CO2?
When they drop the pressure, the CO2 simply evaporates back into thin air.
Leaving behind pure, potent astaxanthin with literally zero chemical residue. That is incredible.
It's very elegant. Now, ethanol methods are the other green route. When highly optimized, they offer very high recovery rates and do an excellent job of preserving the esterified forms of the astaxanthin.
But there's a catch.
Well, they do require complex drying and purification steps downstream to ensure no moisture or alcohol remains in the final product. But both methods rely on immense precision to maintain the chemical integrity of the molecule.
And when you talk about the chemical integrity of the molecule, this is where we start separating the premium supplements from the cheap synthetic knockoffs.
Exactly.
The extraction method and the biology of the algae itself lead directly to the chemical shape of the final product.
Right. We're talking about the isomer profile and the esterification state. These are the technical mechanisms that ultimately define quality and dictate whether your body can even use what you just swallowed.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's break those down because this is where a lot of consumers get tricked. There is natural astaxanthin, and then there is synthetic astaxanthin, which is often made from petrochemicals.
Yes.
And they are not biologically the same thing. Natural H. pluvialis astaxanthin is predominantly what chemists call the all-trans 3s 3' S stereoisomer. That's a mouthful.
It is, but it's important. A stereoisomer refers to the specific spatial arrangement of the atoms. Natural algae produces this very specific uniform 3s 3' S shape.
Okay.
Synthetic astaxanthin, because of how it is chemically synthesized in a lab, yields a broad, mixed isomer profile. You get a chaotic jumble of different molecular shapes.
To make this visual, imagine the cellular receptors in your body are like a perfectly tailored right-handed glove.
I like this analogy.
The natural 3s 3' S isomer is exactly a right hand. It slides into that biological glove perfectly, triggering the health benefits. The synthetic version is like buying a mixed bag of random left and right hands. When that synthetic left hand hits your biological right-handed glove, it just bounces off. Or worse, it jams the receptor, preventing your body from absorbing the real nutrients and forcing your liver to work overtime to clear out the useless chemical clutter. Your biology expects a very specific fit.
That structural mismatch is exactly why synthetic astaxanthin does not align with clean label objectives, and why it frequently fails to replicate the clinical benefits of the natural algae extract.
It's just not the same key for the lock.
Exactly. And beyond the handedness of the molecule, we have to look at its esterification state. Is the astaxanthin free, or is it esterified?
What does esterified mean in plain English?
It means it has long fatty acid chains attached to the ends of the molecule, forming what we call monoesters and diesters.
And when the algae builds that protective red bunker, it doesn't just make free astaxanthin, it almost entirely creates esterified astaxanthin.
It does. And that esterification status is the secret to its bioavailability. Those fatty acid chains dramatically increase the molecule's lipophilicity, which is its fat solubility.
Okay, fat soluble. Why does that matter for us?
Think of those fatty acid chains as chemical anchors. Our human cell membranes are made of lipids fats. Because esterified astaxanthin is also highly fat soluble, it can effortlessly anchor itself straight across our cellular membranes, providing a protective shield on both the inside and the outside of the human cell.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So if the contract manufacturer wants to put this into an oil-based soft gel or a topical cosmetic, they must verify that esterification profile. It ensures the product actually remains stable on the shelf and effectively absorbs into your bloodstream.
Okay, so let's say I find the perfect 3S, 3' S right-handed glove version. It's esterified. I swallow the capsule. How does a microscopic algae sunblock end up doing anything for my actual human biology?
Well, once it enters your bloodstream, astaxanthin acts as a systemic, dose-dependent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory agent.
Systemic meaning whole body.
Right. Remember how it neutralized the free radicals from UV damage to protect the algae's DNA? It performs that exact same mechanism in humans. It circulates through your body, seeking out reactive oxygen species. Those are the rogue molecules that cause oxidative stress, tissue degradation, and aging, and it neutralizes them by donating an electron.
And according to the systematic reviews in the guide, those systemic effects translate into some very specific, noticeable benefits. The major areas are ocular health, skin health, and exercise performance.
Yes, those are the big three.
But how does swallowing a pill protect my eyes?
Your retina is a highly oxygenated environment, constantly exposed to harsh light, making it a prime target for oxidative stress. Most antioxidants just cannot cross the blood-retinal barrier. It's a highly restricted biological gate.
But astaxanthin can.
Yes, its unique molecular structure allows it to slip right through that barrier. It physically accumulates in the macula of your eye, acting as an internal shield against photo-induced damage from screens and sunlight, improving ocular comfort and reducing eye fatigue.
It's literally acting like internal sunglasses.
Yeah.
That is wild. And for skin health, it's a similar mechanism.
Very similar. It accumulates in the dermal layers, neutralizing free radicals before they can degrade your collagen and elastin. Clinical trials show measurable improvements in skin elasticity, moisture retention, and a reduction in fine lines.
And what about exercise?
In the context of exercise, intense physical exertion creates massive amounts of oxidative stress in your muscle tissue. Astaxanthin mitigates that localized damage, facilitating faster oxidative recovery and reducing muscle fatigue after a heavy workout.
The data in the guide breaks down the dosing ranges for these effects. For general antioxidant support and maintaining that skin elasticity, the frequently studied range is between 4 to 8 milligrams per day.
Right, that's a good baseline.
But if you are targeting something intense like that ocular health or specific metabolic endpoints, the studies usually evaluate higher ranges, typically 8 to 12 milligrams per day, sometimes more.
But knowing the milligram count is completely useless if you ignore the biological reality of how this compound moves through your digestive tract.
Right. So what does this all mean for us? I have a very practical question for you on behalf of the listener about that.
Shoot.
Let's say I go out, I spend good money on a premium closed photobioreactor, supercritical CO2 extracted, 3S, 3'S natural astaxanthin supplement. I wake up, I take my 8 milligram dose for skin health first thing in the morning with a cup of black coffee on an empty stomach. Am I basically wasting my money?
It is a phenomenal waste of money.
Yes, seriously.
Seriously. Astaxanthin is highly lipophilic. It's fat-soluble. Co-administration with dietary fats is an absolute physiological requirement for proper absorption.
So the black coffee isn't triggering anything?
Exactly. When you consume it with fat, your gallbladder releases bile salts, which emulsify the fats and pull the astaxanthin across your intestinal wall and into your bloodstream. Without a lipid-based carrier in the capsule itself, or without taking it alongside a fat-containing meal, your body simply cannot absorb it. It will pass right through your digestive tract and into the toilet.
So black coffee and a dry powder pill won't cut it. You need some avocado toast, a spoonful of peanut butter, or you need to ensure the brand formulated the capsule in a heavy carrier oil, like olive or MCT oil.
Formulators know this, which is why premium products are always oil-based soft gels or liposomal emulsions. But as a consumer, you have to verify this. And while the current clinical evidence is incredibly strong, the guide emphasizes the need for more high-quality, large-scale randomized trials.
Because there's still more to learn.
Exactly. We still need to lock down the exact optimal dosing regimens for specific subpopulations. The data demands cautious, informed optimism.
Okay, so hearing how delicate this entire process is, from the open ponds to the wrong isomers to the fat solubility, makes me incredibly suspicious of the cheap bottles I see at the grocery store.
As you should be.
How is a consumer supposed to know if the red pill they are buying is actually this bioactive compound or just synthetic food coloring? Navigating the marketing claims requires a defensive strategy.
It really does. And the regulatory landscape alone is a global maze. It differs wildly depending on where you live.
Let's start with the U.S.
In the United States, astaxanthin from H. pluvialis is regulated strictly as a dietary supplement. The FDA limits aggressive health claims, though specific applications have achieved GRA status, generally recognized as safe.
Meanwhile, in the European Union, the European Food Safety Authority, the EFSA, is famously strict. They require robust, heavily documented, product-specific substantiation for any health claim you want to print on a box.
Right. And in Asian markets like Japan and Korea, regulators often require intense localization of testing data before a product can even hit the shelf.
So what this means for you, the consumer, is that you cannot rely on the flashy marketing copy on the front of the label. You have to learn how to read the fine print on the back.
Exactly.
Well, Fabian's guide provides an incredible 5-point quality checklist for exactly this. It empowers you to stand in the supplement aisle and read a label like a formulation scientist.
It's a great tool.
So imagine you are holding a bottle right now. What is the very first red flag to look for?
Specificity. You are looking for the exact milligram per gram astaxanthin content. If the ingredient list just vaguely says algae extract or Hematococcus pluvialis blend without specifying the exact yield of astaxanthin, put it back. You have no idea what dose you are actually getting.
Got it. Second thing I'm checking is the isomer profile. I am looking for the words natural and ideally confirmation of that 3S, 3'S form. I want the perfectly tailored right-handed glove, not the synthetic mixed bag of chemical clutter.
Perfect. Third is the esterification state. High-quality suppliers understand the biology. They will have documentation on the ratio of monoesters to diesters.
Is that always on the label?
Now, this might not always be printed on a tiny retail label, but transparent premium brands will gladly provide this in their online third-party documentation if you look for it.
Okay, fourth is the delivery mechanism. If I shake the bottle and hear dry, chunky capsules rattling around, I'm out. I want an oil-based soft gel, an emulsion, something that proves the brand understands the fat-soluble absorption rule. And I want to see clear stability data proving the molecule hasn't degraded sitting on the shelf.
Spot on. And the fifth point, which is non-negotiable, independent third-party testing. You want external, lab-verified proof of purity, potency, and the absolute absence of heavy metals or biological contamination.
If a brand hits all 5 of those marks, you know you are holding the real deal. But looking at the massive scale of this booming industry, there is one final hidden requirement looming over all of this.
This raises an important question, actually. Sustainability. With demand absolutely surging in both the nutraceutical and cosmetic markets, how we harvest this resource is critical.
Yeah, we can't just strip mine the algae.
Exactly. The guide stresses that closed-loop cultivation, scalable clean harvest methods, and reduced solvent footprints are no longer just optional marketing angles. They are essential to the survival of the industry. We have to ensure that our pursuit of human cellular health doesn't come at the expense of environmental viability. Producers have to build supply chains that connect ethical, low-impact algae cultivation with green downstream extraction.
It is genuinely incredible to step back and look at the full journey we just took. We started by looking at a microscopic green algae swimming in a puddle.
A very stressed-out algae.
Right. We learned how its desperate survival mechanism, building a red, astaxanthin-rich bunker to survive starvation in sunlight, can be carefully cultivated. We learned how it can be precisely extracted using nothing but pressurized carbon dioxide and properly formulated with healthy fats to become a potent, highly bioactive tool.
It's amazing.
A tool that physically crosses into your retinas to protect your eyes, anchors into your skin cells to preserve elasticity, and scavenges the free radicals that cause aging.
It is a profound example of isolating a brilliant botanical defense mechanism, understanding the chemistry behind it, and applying it directly to human physiology.
And for you listening, being well-informed means you no longer have to guess or just grab the prettiest, most expensive bottle on the shelf. You know to look for that natural 3S, 3' S isomer. You know to demand third-party testing. And you definitely know not to swallow it on an empty stomach with just a cup of black coffee.
Please don't. But before we wrap up, there is one final concept from the underlying science that is worth mulling over.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
We discussed how commercial production currently relies on tightly controlling environmental stress to force the algae to produce a uniform yield of astaxanthin.
Right, the starvation and light stress.
But as biotechnology advances, could the future of nutraceuticals involve intentionally manipulating different types of environmental stressors?
What do you mean?
For instance, what if bombarding the algae with highly specific, isolated light wavelengths or subjecting it to very distinct, tailored nutrient deprivations forced it to produce highly customized, bespoke ester profiles?
Wait, really?
Yeah, we could potentially see astaxanthin cultivated specifically for targeted human health conditions. Imagine one tailored stress profile yielding an ester that acts as the perfect key for ocular health, and a completely different stressor yielding a molecule designed purely to target dermal collagen repair.
Wow. So instead of just forcing the algae to build a generic red bunker to survive a generic winter, we could teach it to forge a highly specialized armor depending on exactly what human disease we needed to defend against.
Exactly. It's biological programming.
That is a wild and incredibly exciting frontier for clean label science. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the resilient red world of Haematococcus pluvialis. Keep reading those labels, remember your healthy fats, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.